What's up? Welcome to the channel. Hey, you are going to notice that this episode is a little bit different. I made this one specifically for people who are either new to poker or you're a friend of mine, somebody who I've talked to who has said, hey, I enjoy hanging out and watching these videos, but I don't understand the poker jargon and I get lost, and then I just want to turn it off because I don't follow. Well, I made this one specifically for you. It's so that you can follow along, you can learn a little bit of poker jargon, also get to the table with me and watch some cards. Let's get started with an interesting hand. We're playing $3, $5 at the Pearl. Before we jump into the action, let me show you this position table. All right, here's what you need to know. There are early position hands, which are right after the blinds. There are middle position hands, which are kind of in between. And there are late position hands, which are kind of closing out the action. They're going to have the last action post-flop. Those are the things you need to know about position. I'm not going to get into every seat, which I will in other videos. But those are the main things you need to know. Now let's get started with Jack 4 offsuit in a bomb pot. All right, let's get into it with my first hand of the night, which is a bomb pot. A bomb pot refers to a hand where every player agrees to put a set amount into the pot, in this case, $20 each, and then skip the pre-flop betting round and go straight to the flop. In this instance, we have a pretty terrible starting hand. It is very rare that we're going to win with Jack 4, but the beauty of the bomb pot format is that, well, we would normally have folded this hand away. In this spot, we're going to at least see the first 3 cards before we make that decision. Those 3 cards are Jack, 6, 7. It checks to me, meaning that everybody wants to continue in the hand, but nobody wants to put money in so far. I'm going to check as well because my hand is not that good. We'll see another card and see what happens. Maybe we can hit a Jack or a 4. The next card is a 3. So close. A player bets $20. Now, when you're playing poker, you're going to hear the term pot odds a lot. People are going to say, I had good pot odds. And all they mean by that is that their price to call was so good that they felt like they just couldn't get away. They were winning this hand often enough to continue. So when he bets $20 into such a big pot, I'm getting a good price. I call and we're going to see the final card, which is called the river. That card is another Jack, and now our hand is improved. My opponent checks it over to me, and this time I bet $60. He folds by throwing his hand in, but does it while showing that he had a pair of 6s. The night starts off on a positive note here with a win. Hand number 2 is pocket 9s, meaning our starting cards are a pair of 9s. I raise to $20. The player after me calls $20, and then the player who is late position here raises to $55. This is a very small raise based on how much money is out there. For that reason, I think I can probably win by raising again. I raise it again here to $160, expecting that my opponent will fold to this bet, but he does make the call. The flop is Queen 9-8, and I have flopped a set. That means the combination of my pocket pair and the 9 on the board gives me 3 of a kind. You'll hear this term commonly used in set mining, which is where you call pre-flop, hoping to hit the 3rd card on the flop for the set. Now, my hand is very strong, and my goal is to get more money in from my opponent, but watch what happens. Before I can do anything, my opponent angrily folds his cards before it's even his turn to act. Unfortunate that he didn't have a strong enough hand to stick around, but that's alright, we're still scooping in some more chips. Now I have ace of hearts, 5 of hearts in late position. When you have a suited ace and a lot of chips in your stack compared to the pot, this hand can be played well because it has the potential to make the nut flush. The nut flush refers to the best possible flush available. In this case, if we got 3 more hearts, we would have the best possible because we have the ace high flush. And then, if your opponent has a strong hand, you'll have a great chance to get paid. For this particular hand, a player raises from early position and I make the call of his $30 bet. The flop brings top pair when we hit an ace. But my hand isn't excellent here, since I'm only holding a 5 for a kicker, meaning that if my opponent has an ace with a higher card than a 5 in his hand, he is currently winning. Since my hand is not extremely strong, I'm going to check after he checks to me. That will take us to the turn, which is another ace. Okay, my hand just improved, and it's now less likely that my opponent holds an ace as well. He bets $15, and this is a really small bet compared to the pot, so I'm going to raise. I make it $65, and he calls. The river is a king. My opponent now bets $250. This is an enormous bet that is larger than the size of the pot. It's difficult to make sense of what this bet is representing, but but it is a very strong play to make this huge bet into a player that has just raised you when there are 2 aces on the board. I think that in this game, this is most likely something like pocket kings that made a full house on the river. I don't know this player well enough to know his bluffing tendencies, and therefore, I've got to assume that he's just made a big hand in his betting. I very reluctantly make the fold. Tell me in the comments if you would have made the call here. Now for this one, I don't have to explain much. There's nothing better than looking down at your starting hand and seeing the best possible one looking back at you. Pocket aces. I raised two $20 from early position. 2 late position players make the call. The flop is pretty good for aces. 9, 5, 7, rainbow. Rainbow, what does that mean? Is the flop confused about its gender? No, it simply means that the 3 cards do not share a suit. I bet $40 and 1 player makes the call. The turn is the jack of spades. I bet again for $75 this time. My opponent calls again. The river's a 10, and now there are 4 cards to a straight, meaning my opponent only needs to hold 1 card in order to have the straight. I check since my hand is less likely to be the best hand. My opponent also checks and shows a pair of pocket queens, which is a surprise to me, but it does mean that we do have the best of this one, so we are scooping some chips. Another pocket pair shows up after moving to the main table. This time it's pocket 9s and I'm in the small blind. A player in early position raises to $15 and then 4 players call. I re-raise to $100, expecting to win the hand right here. Instead, 5 players make the call. This is not good with pocket 9s. The flop comes down ace, ace, 4. This would be a pretty good flop if we were heads up. Heads up means that it's just one opponent and myself. Instead, we are multi-way here, and the more opponents we have, the less valuable a pair of 9s becomes. I check. The player after me bets $100. Everyone folds around to me. I'm going to call one time and see what he does. $100 into $600 is a very small bet, and I don't have to be correct here very often to make this call. The turn is a 5. He bets $100 again, and I'm going to call because typically when a player bets the same amount 2 streets in a row, it tends to be a sign of weakness. The river is a queen, and this time he checks. I also check, and the 9s are the best hand after all. You can see that I'm the small blind for this hand, and I have ace-queen offsuit. An early position opponent has been playing too many hands and raises to $25. I mention he's playing too many starting hands because each player will be dealt premium starting hands at the same ratio. Therefore, I know that on average, his hand strength will have to be lower than normal. There is a collar in between the raiser and myself, and I raise it up again to $125. The player in the big blind behind me calls, and the original raiser calls as well. The flop is ace, king, 8 with 2 spades. I'm now going to c-bet. What did you just say? You have a c-bet? No, I made a c-bet, which is a continuation bet. Now the continuation bet is simply when a player who raised pre-flop continues to bet on the flop. My opponents all give this plenty of respect and both choose to fold. At this point, I've made a decent profit and things are going pretty well when we get Jack 10 suited in the big blind. I call $20 to see the flop. The flop is interesting as it gives us a flush draw with 2 diamonds on the board. I check, there's a $50 bet and then 2 callers. My price to hit the flush is fantastic with a flush draw, and I have a backdoor straight draw. Backdoor means that I need the next 2 cards in a row to both help me out in order to make this hand. So in order to get a backdoor straight, I would need to hit, it's called runner, runner, but I would need 2 cards back to back that both build the straight for me. So I make the call as well. The turn is the 10 of hearts. An opponent now bets $150. This bet is reasonably small given that we have a pair and a flush draw. I make the call with many chances to improve. I can hit a 10, a jack, or a diamond. The river is the king of clubs, not one of the cards we were looking for. I made an unusual play here, and I got creative. I'm holding the jack of diamonds, which would make the most sense for a combination that stumbled into the straight by the river. In other words, queen jack of diamonds, if I had the queen instead of the 10, would have been looking for the flush, added a straight draw, and then hit the straight on the river. For that reason, I'm going to see how strong my opponent is by betting out for $300, which is the state maximum in Washington. Now looking back, I think this is a terrible play because my bet is too small compared to the pot, and We started this hand with several opponents, so he is more likely to have a strong hand than normal. I wish I hadn't made this bet, but I did. My opponent raised to $600, and now this is an easy fold. On this channel, I like to show you my mistakes as well, because I believe that we are never best, always learning, and by sharing mistakes, I can show you what not to do, and we can both learn from it and be better off for it. Let's go on to the next hand. I did not capture my hand very well here on camera, but I have ace of clubs, 10 of clubs in late position. I raised to $20 when it folds to me, and both the small blind and the big blind make the call. We're headed to the flop multi-way, meaning that we are playing against multiple opponents for this hand. The flop is ace of spades, 3 of spades, 5 of clubs. This flop is pretty decent for our hand, and the small blind leads out for $20. This is close to the amount that I would have bet here if it had checked to me, so I'm going to make the call. I think that a raise here would have been fine as well, since his initial bet was a little bit smaller and the opponent has been playing almost every hand. The turn is the king of diamonds, and this time he bets $50. I call one more time with top pair to see the river. Now the river is the 9 of diamonds, and he bets $100. It's difficult to say what hand would do this, but it could be a flush draw that missed, a set of 3s or 5s, or possibly a 2-pair hand. I'm going to throw in the call since this player's been really splashy and active, and see where we're at.
Oh my.
He shows me King 3 offsuit. Woo! Shout out to Jason, who definitely got the best of me here. Next up is a pair of jacks. An opponent in late position makes a raise to $20. It doesn't always feel good to play a big pot with jacks, but this is still the 4th best starting hand, and I'm going to raise it up to $80 in the big blind. My opponent makes the call. The flop is 3 of diamonds, 5 of spades, jack of spades, and I bet $100. My opponent calls. The turn is the 8 of spades. When my opponent calls on this board, he's going to have a mix of pocket pairs and flush draws more than anything else in his range. What's a range? A range is a group of hands that a player should have. It is a guess only, but it helps us analyze how to play against other players. Rather than deciding which 2 cards my opponent holds and playing against that, we're going to choose all of the possible hands that he could play against and then narrow them down slowly throughout the hand to try to get to the few hands that make the most sense by the river. For that reason, this is a good spot to check, and then we can bet most rivers. He checks as well. The river is the 10 of diamonds. I bet really small here for $100. I probably could have gone for $150, but he does make the call. I never get to see what he has because he throws his cards in the muck as soon as I show the jacks. I'm in the big blind again for this hand. A player raises to $15 and 2 players call. I call with 4-6 suited to see the flop since I only need to put $10 in to see a flop with a $60 pot. The flop is very interesting. 5 of spades, king of clubs, 7 of clubs. I have flopped a combo draw. A combo draw is when you have multiple ways to draw to a better hand. In this case, I have what's called an open-ended straight draw. I can hit a 3 or an 8 to make a straight, and I can also hit any club to make a flush. I check. There's a bet of $15 and 2 callers. I'm going to raise this one up to $75, and 2 opponents end up making the call. The turn is the queen of clubs, giving us the flush. Now it's time to bet for value. I bet out for $175 this time. Only 1 player calls after thinking for a while. The river is the ace of spades, and I'm going to bet one more time for value for $220. My opponent thinks for a long time before deciding that he will call. I turn up my flush, and he shows 8-9 of clubs. A slightly better flush.
Really?
We're losing this one. Finally, last word I'm going to show you here is quads. Now you probably already know what quads are, but this is a more common way of saying 4 of a kind. I was wrapping up when I hit this hand. I wasn't really planning on filming, but I pulled my camera out and got the end of it just to prove that it happened. Nice little win to finish the night, and we're gonna cash out. While I was into this game for $1,500, I cashed out for $1,955, meaning we booked a profit of $455. Congratulations to this Patreon supporter who has just won $45. It's coming your way. Thanks for supporting the channel. If you want to win some money when I win at the poker table, would love to get you in there and get you paid. Check out the info below. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, anything you want to know more about, leave it in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to get in touch with you and get back to you. Thanks for being here. Have a great week. I'll talk to you next time.